hi everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I guess I'm looking around and I know most of you, but for those of you I don't know, I'm Molly Antopol. I'm a fiction writer and I'm a writer in residence here at SLS. And today I'm really pleased to be talking with Fiona McCrae, who I'm sure all of you know by now. She's been the publisher of Grey Wolf Press for the past 18 years, following 11 years at Faber & Faber, where she was a director and executive editor. Some of the Grey Wolf authors she's published include Charles Baxter, Salvatore Scibona, and Percival Everett, as well as R. Josip Novakovic and Andrew Monson, and Steve Stern has a book of stories coming out really soon, also with Grey Wolf. And she's also on the board for Books of Africa and is an advisor for Open Letter Press. So thanks, Fiona, for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And I thought we could start just sort of having an across-the-board talk, and then later on we'll open things up for questions with everyone. So first of all, I would just love to hear more about your background and how you came to work in publishing.
Oh, that.
That.
Well, I was studying English literature at Bristol University in England, and you probably mostly all know, but in England when you study something, that's all you do. So it was like 3 years only English literature, and I didn't even cover it all, you know. And so it didn't leave me qualified for much. And I thought about teaching, actually, and then on the way to teaching kind of fell into a junior position in publishing. And my second job was at Faber & Faber. And that's what, you know, and once I arrived there, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. And one of my bosses who was retiring had found William Golding and was Beckett's editor and Seamus Heaney. So it felt quite an exciting time. And we were publishing Milan Kundera and Kazuo Ishiguro and Peter Carey and some poetry. It was an interesting list. I was interested in the drama and the poetry and the fiction and the art books. So it was very literary. They did things against themselves, like more commercial, fun things sometimes. But it was this rock solid centre, and there was at that time sort of a commitment to a sense of the curatorial sense of being an editor and shaping the culture somewhat, and there being a certain kind of mission to what you were doing rather than only the bottom line. And then I sort of rose through the ranks of went up the greasy pole, so to speak, and in 1991 I was shipped to America to join the smaller American office that was Faber & Faber Inc., which is subsequently, years later, it's been bought by Farrar Straus. It's an imprint now, Farrar Straus. And that was based out of Boston, and that's what got me to America and got me interested and introduced to the small press world in America. That's much more vibrant than the small press world in England. Because, for example, when we were at Faber, we would publish something, do 1,200 copies and 120,000 copies, and all numbers in between. Whereas everything you say about publishing, you generalize all the time, and there's exceptions to everything that I'm going to say. But there's kind of a ledge in American publishing where the publisher thinks, possibly 15,000 is the minimum below which they can't take something on as an expectation. But a lot of them hope for more than that, 40,000. Or I once met someone with the Hyperion, and he was saying, well, $1 million. It's the first print run. So there's room to be successful underneath that ledge.
Right.
Whereas I feel the smaller presses in Britain are much smaller, and they don't have the sources of funding that they do in America. So that's at Faber Inc. That's how I got into the small press, and then Grey Wolf was like a cross between what I thought was the best of Faber London and then the best of the small presses in America.
I thought this might be interesting for the group, just to hear what exactly does an editor do? Like, I'm curious about how collaborative the process is of publishing a book and how much back and forth there is between you and the writers.
So, what does an editor do? Well, I'm sure some of you know and have been edited and or are editors, but I see it as possibly three phases of being an editor. And I think some editors are two of these three, but it's rare that you're all of these three. And number one is the acquiring editor, who, and the job of an acquiring editor is to go out and meet with agents, try to be articulate about what you're looking for, present the press, spend 2 weeks in places like Vilnius among writers, hoping that people will send you manuscripts, spread the word, read the manuscripts as they come in, sift through them, try and identify the interesting things, try and separate the chaff from the grain, and then you acquire, and then there's the sort of house editor, line editor, where you work with the book and shape it and give feedback. And so there's a novel that I've been working on this week. I acquired it about 2 or 3 months ago and brought the manuscript with me. And so this week I was going through it to look at anything from one word coming up 3 or 4 times within 5 lines, and then you just circle the ball and say, okay, question mark, or whatever, to some more structural things. You know, does this scene work? And put notes in the margin. And also, if there's a great line, you say, wonderful, or also looking for little ticks. And there's one, a lot of prose writers, they'll have a half a sentence, and then they'll have this add-on, which is often a gerund tense, and it's really flattens the sentence. And I think any time that you can take that comma away and just change that verb a little bit or put something else in, it always makes the sentence more lively. So if I see someone's doing that repeatedly, so when I give feedback on a finished manuscript, it's here are the things that you might look at that are recurring problems. You have a tendency to do this, or and I'll say something like, I've marked it up, but you might look beyond that because you can't necessarily catch every one. And sometimes I find when I first get a manuscript, when I first sit down, I make more comments, because after a while you get lulled into the rhythm. And then I might say something structural, like there seems, could be that there's too many characters, and I might suggest losing one or something, and then it breaks down into more specific, shorter comments, and then it's like see the rest of my comments on the manuscript itself. But I think it's important to put little check marks if I'm liking something, so that, and I do it all in pencil. I don't like the red crayon approach.
Right, it's very teacherly.
It's like, and I put a question mark more or less after every single comment I make. Delete. Another tip people have is they over-explain. So it's like, well, just let, you don't need that last half sentence at the end of the chapter. Just let that hang. It's more effective. So I'll say necessary or more effective. I don't say too emphatic or boring or something. If something's cliche, I try and say too common or rephrase or something like that.
I've read this before.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the way I think of it ideally is trying to get your eye as close to the text as you can. Well, obviously the author is the closest, and that's why everything is a question, because if it doesn't ring true to something in them. And sometimes, I sometimes get asked this question about, do we only take on a manuscript when it's at 100%, or where would we take something on even though we can see it needs work? And there is a sort of borderline where we'll work on something, poetry editor the same, and normally we have to have a conversation first to say, like, if I was looking at a Steve Stern novel and I said, well, I really like it except for the humour, could you take the humour out? Then that's too much. If you say, it seems to be going really well, but I'm really interested in this subplot. How about expanding that? And quite often when you put your finger on something and the relationship's going to be good, the author says, oh, thank God you said that. I've been wanting to do that, but another editor who saw it didn't like that. Or so I think that you have to, if you're doing a large edit, you have to establish from the beginning that there's a common vision.
Right.
And then perhaps have us, with a lot of manuscripts, when we take it on, there's a sort of test, like, well, if the author refuses every single suggestion, would you still publish it? But sometimes the author will work on something without a contract and then send it back. So the manuscript we're looking at this week, we rejected it a year or so ago, gave some reasons, and it's come back, and we've got it exclusively. The author took it very well. And then I think that the third kind of editor is a managing editor. And the managing editor really copy edits and proofreads and just makes it error-free and goes through it for consistency. So I just was editing a novel, and it's very ambitious, huge, loads of plot, which we normally don't like, but she's got such an interesting voice that we took it on. And I must have read it, I think, 4 times or something, going through it. And the copy editor has found that something was off on the timeline. So the copy editor is reading it more closely and probably making a little chart. And just catching things for consistency. But it's unusual that the acquiring editor is a copy editor.
Right.
But possibly the line editor could be the copy editor. And you want to have something in front of you and no one else has written anything quite like this.
Right.
Which infuriates me when it comes to marketing, because increasingly, I don't know if Dawn has this with her life as a reviewer and everything, but everybody wants comps, which means, can you compare this novel to another novel? And I want to say, I can't compare it to another novel, that's why we're publishing it. And they want comps, and they want something that's been published in the last 3 or 4 years also. So if I thought I was publishing something that was extremely like something else that had been published 2 years ago,
right.
Plus I've never read anything because I spend my whole life with my nose in manuscripts, so I find that very frustrating. But the idea that something is singular, and you could only get it, only this person is writing like this in this way. I think that's a very compelling value to have, because you're asking people to spend their time on it. So you don't want to give them something that hasn't been done before, and you don't hit the highs every time. I remember reading a memoir by Kurt Wolff, and he said he was only proud of publishing Kundera. No, not Kundera, Kafka was the only one he was proud of publishing. I mean, somebody doing something 100% brand new throughout the whole work, you don't get that every time, but that's kind of the holy grail. Was it just something, was it Dickinson or somebody else who said that which it looks wholly new looks wholly wrong? So some things take time, and that's one of the reasons why Grey Wolf, like some of the other sort of flourishing small presses in America, is non-profit, so we get subsidies so that not everything has to turn a profit within 6 to 9 months of being published, which is a huge relief. And we get lots of credit ourselves for doing that, but we couldn't do it without that subsidy. If I was an editor for a large house in Manhattan, I wouldn't be able to take on some of the things I take on. Anna Monson is a good example. Very, very original voice doing that kind of non-fiction. We started a non-fiction prize, and I think he was the second winner. And he again, we encouraged him. He was runner-up the first year. We encouraged him. He came back and he won. And he's, there's nobody else who sounds remotely like him. And there's another writer called John DeGarda that we published who's also doing new sort of edgy things with non-fiction. So every now and again we get submissions from people who have been influenced by Andermotson and John DeGarda. And that's, you know, there's the measure of sales or reviews or award success, but influencing other writers is another way of measuring impact, which I think if you're a non-profit, you have that extra ability to be able to measure in that way. You're not always counting the beans, although we nevertheless are in the black.
Yes.
You know, just because they're non-profit, we're not trying to not sell. You know, one of the very distinct things that's going on at the moment is the whole digital revolution. And he's responding to it in the most interesting place, which is in his writing. I'm going to die of boredom when the next person asks me a question like, Sam, is the book dead? You know,
right.
Sam, how are you handling great publishing ebooks? And yes, but we are, and there is lots of relevant things to say about that, but it's the book just being delivered electronically. But the big question is, what is going to be made new because of this? You know, is there an equivalent, like when they went from plays to movies, and they were first of all filming the plays, and then they realized you could move the camera, and the movies are born. You know, so that change that brought in a whole new genre is there or isn't there? And Ander is somebody who is doing something that might be answering that question. But on the whole, I'm more tending to think that fiction and poetry and literature is already so virtual in the way that it works that you can't make it more virtual digitally. You can only do something clunky, like, you know, it's almost like it goes like opera. You know, you have to put in something visual that doesn't actually affect the word. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
That you can't get a more virtual universe than a novel that you read in your head, or a narrative that you read in your head. So, you know, it's like the envelope sign to send is more specific than the word to send. It's already said it's paper, it looks like this, and it's this size. So you're already putting constraints on it. But the word to send can be anything. Your imagination can respond to that. That's my 2 cents on the digital revolution. You know, and also I think when I'm editing, when I'm in that phase when I'm reading a manuscript, Anne and Zoran know they were having an editorial meeting at Grey Wolf yesterday, and there was 2 pieces of fiction came up. So I was looking at the first 50 pages of each of them. So when I'm reading, I'm looking for the talent. I'm thinking, where's this going? And does this feel like the best the writer can do, or does it feel like the beginning of something? And how does it fit with the rest of the list? And I've got a Grey Wolf hat on that I don't have on when it doesn't have to be contemporary, or I don't have to think about who's going to read this, or does it sound too much like Fiona McCrae, only slower, or Fiona McCrae, only faster, and all those things. So. And there is something nice. I enjoy reading on paper that's double-spaced. There's a kind of has a kind of fluid quality to it. So I when I'm reading a manuscript myself, I don't book to myself. I don't start editing it. I accept it that it's finished and complete. But when it's printed, I could see, well, I'm reading it as it is, but also imagining how it could be other ways.
Yeah, it's interactive in that way.
Yeah. So I quite like that. Yeah, I do read on a Kindle as well sometimes.
You know, I was thinking this might be of interest to at least probably some people in the group. Is do you ever take, you know, submissions from the slush pile, or is everything like within all genres agented, or how does that part work?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a huge internal debate about the slush pile, and you can all weigh in and tell me what we should do, because very, very little comes in from the slush pile to be published. So this is our catalogue. Okay, so we published. I finally edged it up to 30 books a year. There were 2-3 years there when it was 27 books, 28, 29. But finally,
and Steve's on the cover.
Steve's turn on the cover. how much? A mere $26 since September. So we publish this twice a year, 15 books in each. So just this is someone who we published before. Paperback reprints of 2 books. So it's the exact same book. The others were the authors published before. That entire catalogue. There's no new writer in this catalogue. I didn't realise that. And then in the most recent backlist, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 9 are new. So even though it looks like we've got 30 slots, we haven't. Maybe it's only 15 are genuinely new. And so the statistical chances, there's like, at one point they figured it would get about 4,000 submissions a year in the slush pile. And so the other books are coming in more through sort of direct contacts, which they're just more targeted. Mm-hmm. You know, if the agent knows what we're looking for, or I meet someone at a place like this, and there's been a conversation, and so on. Whereas the slush pile is random. And there was 2 or 3 years when we were partnering with Breadloaf to publish the winner of the Bakeless. Mm-hmm. But we're just going to end that relationship as of next year's the last time we'll publish, because it was putting 3 books on the list that we didn't pick.
Right.
We still do the relationship with Kavikanan, where we publish their winner and so on. So the question is, do we just... And then, so our interns come and they spend 90% of their time going through the slush pile, and I'm there with like 25 manuscripts I'm supposed to read by yesterday. Mm-hmm. It's not physically possible. So like earlier this year that I had one hugely long novel that I was editing, and it sort of ruined my life in a certain way, even though I loved it. And every email I sent, I'm sorry to keep you waiting, I'm sorry for the delay in getting back to you. So is it a better resource to allocate? It's a better allocation of resources to have the interns read the things we're actually looking at, and or the magazines. So I sort of feel like there's kind of, if you're out there writing and putting work in magazines, stay in your car. Ideally, we come to you because we would spot it in the magazine and write to you. And it's questionable, but I think an intern gets the feeling that there's no expectation they'll find anything, mm-hmm. and they could be a bit underconfident and overconfident, and just sort of
right.
No, and it doesn't filter up to us.
Right.
So, but to close our doors entirely to that means that some genius working in their attic or whatever. The genius is always in the attic. That's a cliche. The genius working in their downstairs study might send. You want to be able to send something, but you hope that maybe through word of mouth, through our authors or something. Mm-hmm. But I feel like today, as hard as it is to be published, there are programs like this and Breadloaf and so on, and the editors are going out that with 6 degrees of separation that you shouldn't have to publish. You shouldn't have to send something completely cold somewhere. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's unreasonable. And sometimes we go on these things and go on a course or join a writers' conference in Montana or something, and they out there they really feel removed. Mm-hmm. So they love to have that access. But I think what's his name? Jeffrey Yang, the poet who worked at New Directions, came in cold, and Aggie Michel, a Hebrew writer, came in cold as well. But we haven't taken on a novel that way for a long time. It'd be nice. So Faber, that I mentioned about William Golding, Lord of the Flies, had come in.
Really?
Yes, and so they still had the basket that it was read in. So there was, and it probably funded all the editors going through the slush pile once a week for the next 25 years. That's where the profit that William Golding went. So again, I mean, it would be. it's another kind of holy grail to find this, diamond in the rough, the unagented manuscript that comes through the door, and so on. So when we get to questions, which we're nearly at, aren't we?
Yeah.
You can. I'd be kind of interested what you think, like a small press like Grey Wolf that gets money, like including from the NEA, whether we should or shouldn't have our doors open to the slush pile. Just if you're interested, but obviously you've got your own questions.
Let's just start with questions. I've been asking a million questions, so.
Yes, they've been great questions.
Oh, thank you.
I really enjoyed your questions.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Yeah, I think one of the routes is through the magazines. Are you an example of such a person?
Yeah.
And so let's get specific. What's your genre?
Fiction and poetry.
Yeah, so there's lots of venues for you. And I think if you do that, then you might get a letter, but at least when you submit or put in an inquiry letter, you will have published. And that's another thing that we could do with our slush piles, which I think at one point we did. We said, you have to be published in X number of magazines, just as some kind of filter. But I think that's a good route, and getting a writers group together, that seems to be very effective for people, and then asking your teachers for suggestions and trying to see who publishes books that you like or poems that you like, depending whether you're talking about a magazine or a publisher, and hang around those places and submit to those places and try and get some names so it's not in a slush pile, and then people talk about, I don't know really how effective it is to sort of look in the acknowledgements pages of books that you like and see, they say, I'd love to thank my agent, Binky Urban or Bill Clegg, whoever, and then you write to that agent or find out who that editor is. Maybe some of the best independent booksellers know editors and their tastes. I don't know, anybody else got any suggestions? I don't know if you've heard about this VIDA thing, this count, and it's about how many women get reviewed as opposed to men. So then then some magazines were looking at, how many men and women are submitting to us. And Tin House said that if they write to an author and say, not this time but next time, the men always send back, but 80% of the women never send anything back. They're so crushed. So I just think it's just a game of statistics, and there's very few people out there who've been published who get everything accepted each time, or don't have some kind of horror story somewhere. So I think the thing is not to internalize that. If everybody is rejecting something for the exact same reason, maybe there's something that needs fixing, but I think take something that's... I think while you should keep in mind that there'll be an editing session at some point, I don't think you should be like, I really can't be bothered with this anymore, let someone else fix it, because possibly to yourself it looks like it's 90, it's possibly only at 80, so to yourself get it to 100, and then someone else will still be able to see possibly ways that it can be improved. So, to do the work very, very thoroughly, and then to be very strategic in where you send it, and then not overly depressed. And then things come. My husband, John Coy, the children's book writer, he was in a class doing children's books, learning it, and the teacher said, I'm going to give you the names of 5 editors so you will learn how to handle rejection. So he sent off his first book to these 5 editors, and one of them took it. So success does come, I think. But I think it's all degree and scale as far as I can see. There's definitely the commercial houses, and commercial in a small C. Farrar Straus or Norton or whatever is commercial. There's great editors there, great marketing, and they have budgets. And if you're an important writer to them, you could be an important new writer or an important existing one, they can definitely do good things for you. The small press sort of propaganda line is that we give the attention and we feel like we like to, but attention sometimes can run out, you know, if you need money for an ad. You know, we could talk about how we've got no money for an ad for 2 hours if you like, but we can't actually take it out. I think there's two other distinctions. I think one is that success can be on a scale that is, you know, reasonable or something. So a writer for us can sell over 5,000 copies, and that's good, or 10,000 copies or something. And we have a relationship with that author whereby they can feel successful. So if you're only selling 15,000, 10,000 or something in a larger house, you might be made to feel something like persona non grata, or and I think you start to accumulate, or you say essays, or you say short stories, and the editor's eyes glaze over. I think also that you know, this catalogue, everything. Going back to that question about what's Grey Wolf looking for, some people have said to me, when you look at the Grey Wolf list, you know it's there because of the work. It's chosen because it's good work. It's not there because it fits some precondition. So it's very, you know, everybody knows if it's a collection of short stories, you'll know it's literary. But if you're looking at a catalogue where there's a recipe book, golfing tips, increase your brain, short story collection, there's no way to read the context for that short story collection. And the people that you're working with, the publicity people, sometimes are doing a number of different things. But you get that concentration of literary around houses like Norton or Farrar Straus or Knopf. It's some of the ones where it's like publish anything and throw it against the wall, where there's no literary identity. So publishing has got this quality where it's there's always this tendency to go big and the conglomerates, but then it's always breaking down. So within the larger houses, there are little imprints or one brilliant editor who's got a vision. So it's not black and white, and by the same token, our list isn't only first and second novel, first and second books, and then everybody graduates to the large house. We do some of that, but we also do, a person on their fifth or sixth or seventh book who hasn't had a big hit has an almost more difficult time placing their work than a new writer. So we can publish those people as well, and some of them, fantastic writers. So, like Steve. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, that's, I think, one of the nice things about the digital times we live in. Like, in the olden days, there'd be a review in the Chicago Tribune, and you'd think, well, that's lovely, but it's not. No one beyond Chicago is reading this. And anybody in Chicago who's reading it's got to get in their car, get down to the bookstore. But now, I mean, it's nothing. We need our bookstores, but they can be an impulse buy, and the person can post it, and then the Chicago Tribune can be read by people all over, and there can be an immediacy. And some of the young people at Grey Wolf now, they're doing. We have like 130,000 plus Twitter followers, which is disproportionate to our size, because we happen to have a very talented tweeter. So. And our Facebook is quite active. So there are all these avenues and ways of connecting that weren't there before, that I think can make the publication feel a little bit more immediate and exciting. You can't bemoan it really. But other, I've heard a lot of what Dawn says is the common wisdom, and the larger houses are teaching people how to do it.
Right.
But I think there's also the feeling like, if you don't like it, don't do it, because you won't do it well.
Right. That's what I was. Do you have some authors who are just reclusive or uncomfortable about this, and they just don't do it, and it's fine?
The aforementioned Oscar Molnarchuk, for example, would much rather just drive it. He still wants to drive, put the books in the car of his trunk, the trunk of his car, drive around to the booksellers. You have to do what fits. Although I think even he's got a website now, but. There's some people who are good at it and some people who are not. And the Irish writer just now said he feels that he shouldn't be on. He wants to be there as a listener, but he doesn't want to put himself out there because he doesn't want to stop people talking about him, and or have the feeling that his words can be free. I don't know if any of you are friends with your Roddy Doyle, but he puts out little extracts, and so our Irish writer was saying, well, does that lead to the expectation that you could get Roddy Doyle for free? I don't know. It's all up for grabs. So you don't think I'm only Pollyanna about the new digital stuff. I think that I mentioned before about the editorial question, is there new work that's going to come out, but the publishing or the commercial cultural landscape question is that independent booksellers are geniuses at reading books, selecting books, and so on. And now, if they go away, or by contrast, now in the digital thing, you've got these big players: Apple, Amazon, Google, and there's another one. And anyway, and they are not. They're having this huge impact on publishing, but they're not based in the book culture. In the olden days, the big bad wolf was Barnes and Noble, but now people say, well, at least Barnes and Noble was about books.
Right.
And Apple wants you to buy the equipment. Amazon wants a click of your share of your transaction. Google wants you to search so that they can advertise to you. And they don't care what you buy or who you buy or why you buy it. And so that has a kind of, that's the sort of dark cloud. That's what I was saying before about publishing is always having this conglomerate. And there's a big lawsuit at the moment that's trying to prevent Amazon from having a monopoly on ebooks. But the lawsuit looks like it's for the consumer interest, but actually it might have the reverse effect. So those are things to watch out for. And there's a new site that's called what's it called, Zola, where they're trying to get around Amazon. So whereas Amazon wants to get rid of all the middlemen, Zola wants to put the reviewers and so on and the recommenders back into the system. So I would say when you've got a body of work, if you've just got 2 short stories or something, but there's a few short stories and perhaps 2 of them have been in a magazine and you're ready to have a collection, or there's a novel on the way. And I think some agents, if it's fiction, they like there to be a novel at least in the offing, the minimum at the offing, the maximum done, which is possibly a shame, but that's the way it is.
For poetry, is that
poetry, good luck getting an agent. That's not, because 15% of $1,000 to $3,000, which is the advance range, doesn't do much for them. So most poets who have agents that they're doing non-fiction work as well, or something. So, but if you're a poet and you're being published, then somebody might approach you, or there's loads of contests and that kind of. There's lots of doors open for. But I would probably just wait till you have a collection ready if it's poetry.
And I'll say with that I write stories, and I found it really helpful. I think that I started to work with my agent when I had 5 stories done, and that was good for me because we're like in the process right now of putting it together and kind of talking about final step. And it's been really useful to have this extra pair of eyes, a person who thinks about it so differently, as we kind of sift through the stories. Because I feel like I wouldn't really be able to. It's just like when you're too close to something yourself. So it's nice to have someone who kind of helps you sculpt it. So I had gotten the other advice about. Waiting until you're totally done and then also having part of a novel or blah, blah, blah. But at least for me, it's been kind of nice to have someone kind of help put it together. So if that's useful.
Well, still, that's another nature of working in publishing at the moment is that all the print media have to be attended to as they always had. But a lot of them haven't gone away completely, the magazines and so on. So we're catering to all them and to a new lot of bloggers and so on. But not every last blogger who just set up yesterday, but that's, you know, there's a sort of chicken and egg, but once they've got a bit of a reputation or something, then we'll send to them. And there are some who are quite influential, and others that are not. Or if there's, you know, another novel that you'll enjoy reading is this fabulous Sri Lankan novel about cricket that has won the Commonwealth Prize, and a number of others, and so because it had a cricket aspect, so then an intern one day is going through and finding all these cricket associations, and is anybody blogging or writing about cricket, and we got some extra attention that way. So, you know, that kind of research couldn't have been done 10 years ago in quite the same way. So, and but it's interesting. A friend of mine who works at the New York Review of Books is saying that young people, not your kind of young people, but the other kind of young person, they're not distinguishing about they're not discriminatory about the source of their information. You know, well, I read it online. Well, who said that online? You know, something like a big review of the New York Review of Books that someone's paid for and edited, and, you know, possibly has a certain standard. Downside is it's the same old people reviewing, or it's, you know, they can only have X number of books, so here's online where you can have everything. It's sort of like that Borges story, right, where, you know, if everything is online, how do we find it? You know, so I went to a conference at the beginning of this year where it's the buzzword is about discoverability. You know, discoverability, because you want, just because you've put your Facebook page up or Grayl's got something up, you know, who's going to go there? So you need to drive people to your site, and you know, how you make people do that. And there's the new marketing is sort of, Big Brother is now a marketing person who's eavesdropping on all your computer activities. You buy, you know, something online, and then suddenly your Google page is advertising that product to you. And Barnes and Noble and possibly Amazon now have this thing where they can tell when you stop reading. So, dear author, did you know that on page 50 you lose 77% of your audience? You could imagine coming. You know, so talk about market research. You're going to be able to, you know, and some of that is spooky to me. You know, if you're having a friend discussion about, you know, Lithuania or something with your Facebook, and then suddenly you get someone's trying to sell you a novel set in Lithuania. Mm-hmm. Is that a good thing, or is that a bit creepy?
It's super creepy.
I think it's creepy. You know, every time you buy something in a store, they want your email. You say, no, I just want the skirt. I don't want a relationship with your store. You know, so it's kind of constant.